everyone, my name is Letty and I'm going to be presenting to you your best digital fundraising strategy. So I just wanted to make a few comments about myself first of all, so you know who you are listening to. So I have 7 years of experience in the non-for-profit sector, and I was a digital marketing manager for Greenpeace UK and France for about 5 years. And I am now a digital consultant at Burne Consulting. So I help lots of organizations, like international organizations like Greenpeace, the World Food Programme from the UN, BirdLife International, to kick off and develop their digital fundraising strategies. So hopefully in the next 45 minutes, I will give you the secret to the best digital strategy. A ton of top tips and best practices to get you started, and some practical advice to either get you started or improve on what you are already doing. So let's start. The best digital strategy is essentially to start making money. So this feels, sounds quite simple. And yes, that is, I'm sure, what everyone wants and needs. So really, how do you start doing that? So one thing that we have noticed a lot with a lot of different organizations is when they start, they need to have a positive narrative for digital in their organization, and to get that is to get good digital results. Once you get these really good digital results in place, then you start having a really good story for digital in your organization, and then you can start asking for more budget for digital fundraising. One of the ways you can do this, and quite honestly the easiest and quickest way you can start testing at a low cost, is Facebook and Instagram advertising. So in this presentation we'll go a little bit through what this is and how you can get started with Facebook and Instagram advertising. First of all, I guess I would like to make a few comments on why Facebook ads. So Facebook ads, it gives you the chances to essentially tap into audiences that you wouldn't normally be able to reach with traditional fundraising. So if you're doing print media, and if you're doing unpaid, so for example Facebook organic or Instagram organic or email, you just won't reach as many audiences, and specifically new audiences, if you are just doing those channels. And Facebook advertising, paid Facebook advertising, really allows you to do that. The second thing is that it's an opportunity to build audiences thanks to your pixel. So we'll talk a little bit about the pixel later on in the presentation, but essentially the pixel is a bit of code that is on your pages, on your donation pages or on your website pages, and it sort of allows you to track visits and specific actions on those pages as well. So that means thanks to the pixel and Facebook, you can start potentially targeting people who visited your website, or people who look like people who visited your website, or people who have engaged with a specific page. So this is really useful, again, to try and tap into new audiences. So also thanks to your pixel, you can create journeys for your audiences. So say you got a great viral organic video, lots of people have sort of interacted with this video, it told a story about your organization or about a certain campaign, and then you want to take these people on the next step of the journey. You can then retarget these people with a specific ask, potentially for donations or something else. And then secondly, Facebook ads and the ad manager, so where you are going to be managing your ads, is a controllable environment. So you know exactly what you're spending and exactly what you're getting back. You can turn things on and off, campaigns on and off as you want. So it's not like print where it's a little bit of guessing and it's just fingers crossed a little bit on what you're going to get back, whereas here it is a lot more controllable with Facebook ads. And this is really possible with small budgets and limited resources. If you have just one person on digital, doing digital fundraising in your organization, that's totally enough human resources to get started with Facebook ads. And, you know, very small budgets, lots of organizations that we help have very small budgets to start off with and get some really positive results with small amounts of money. So one question that you might be asking yourselves right now is, what about all of the other channels? So what about Google Ads and paid search, or organic search, or chat channels like WhatsApp or Messenger, YouTube? There's so much digital out there. So why are we saying that we prefer or that it's good to start with Facebook and Instagram ads? So the honest truth is that you don't need to be on all digital channels. So if you're working up towards developing your digital strategy, I wouldn't try and be on all digital channels at one time. And like I said, if you're starting off, or even if you're developing, the Facebook and Instagram, paid Instagram allows you, it is a more controlled environment. So it allows you to really develop that channel. So again, you just don't need to be on all channels. Now, the sad thing as well is that today, organic, so what I mean by that is posts that you may do on Facebook and on Instagram, it just simply does not pay out anymore. It is a paying world today. So if you want to get reach and you want to get more conversions, more donations, or whatever your campaign goal is, you can scale a lot better on paid and not on organic. A huge advantage of Facebook and Instagram is that it doesn't rely on your brand to work. So a big question that we get from organizations is, yes, but we are not as well known as this and this organization. And yet when we launch Facebook advertising with them, they get great results. And that is because on Facebook, it is about your campaign, and we'll go through that a little bit later in the presentation. It is about your campaign. It is about what you're asking. It is about the topic, and that is what gets people to take action, and not necessarily because you're a big name or a small name. So one thing to add on the first point, that you don't need to be on all digital channels, is if you nail Facebook advertising, you can start exploring other paid channels. So particularly like the Google platform, Google Ads platform is very similar to the Facebook advertising platform. So if you get this right, you can then start exploring other platforms. So you might be convinced by all of this, or you may be still a bit wondering, I'm not quite there yet. Hopefully these next slides will show you how quite easy it is, and also the potential of Facebook advertising and where you could be next, essentially. So first and foremost, let's start with the basics. So the first thing is to know your audience. So this is a pretty classic thing in fundraising in general, but you'd be surprised still how many organizations don't really know who they're talking to. So the questions that you should be asking yourself is, who is already donating to you, or who is taking action with you? Who visits your website? What do they do? What do they like? And specifically, what motivates them to take action? So this is really a key question that should be the common thread across all fundraising that you do and the Facebook advertising campaigns that you do as well. So really, it is stop making it about you and start making it about your donor. You want to really shift from what your organization is, your cause, your appeal. Avoid saying I, me, and move towards what are the passions, the motivations, and the purposes of your donors. If you start to understand those things, then you'll really nail digital fundraising. If you adapt your campaigns, your topics, your creative, and we'll go through this, to these things, their passions, motivations, and purpose, you're already a good step ahead. So be donor centric. So picking the right campaign angle for a Facebook campaign, for me, there's 3 easy things to think about. Is it emotive? Does it bring emotion? When somebody sees this ad, does it provoke something within them? Is it anger? Is it sadness or happiness? Some sort of strong emotion that will provoke someone to take action. Is it easy to explain? Is the campaign easy? Is it just a one-liner? And do you have a simple solution? So the example here is an example from BirdLife International, where as you can see, the image is pretty self-explanatory, and the copy above the ad is very simple. It is simply explains that close to 4,000 bird species are snatched from the wild and illegally sold across Asia every year. So this is a really sensitive topic for animal lovers, for people who really care about conservation. It's very clear to see what the problem is, and the simple solution is that we need people to donate to this campaign so that we can simply end illegal bird trading. So the make it work. One thing that we recognize a lot in organizations is sometimes there's a bit of a divide between the fundraising teams and the campaigning teams or the programs teams, and there's a push for a certain campaign to work. And then we try it on Facebook advertising, or we try it in fundraising in general, and it's just not kicking off. It's just not, there's just no conversions happening. And it's probably because it doesn't resonate with your audience. So really let the data speak for itself. If you are doing all of the things that we're going to go through this presentation, and still you're not getting the right conversions, it's probably because your campaign angle is just not working for digital. So like I said, complex campaignings that require a lot of explaining, if it's very technical, won't work on digital. As you know, you probably all are also digital users, digital platform users, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or email. Everyone's very busy, and people scroll through their feed very quickly. So you have to attract the attention really quickly. It has to be really easy to understand. So keep it simple. Make it one ask. And we call this the elevator pitch. If you can explain it really quickly in a one-liner, this is the great campaign for you. So a little note on picking the right audiences to target. So some of you might already be running Facebook programs. Some of you might just be starting. So this is just some few tips on audiences wherever level you are at. So one major thing is to be able to target people on interests. So like I said, if you really know your audience, if you know what motivates them to take action, targeting people based on their interest becomes really easy. And don't hesitate to also try out some more obscure interests. Sometimes these can really work out pretty well. So lookalike audiences, for those who aren't quite familiar with what it is basically you're telling Facebook to target people who look like a certain audience. So maybe people who look like your current donors, or people who look like your website visitors or people who have engaged with your Facebook page, for example. So these tend to be really good, safe bets for any conversion campaign that you're running. You get good results through these lookalike audiences, but there is one thing to flag with that, is that it's better to not run more than one lookalike group at a time. The reason being because these audiences tend to be very similar. And so there's a really big overlap between your lookalike audiences, and that's when your ads start competing. And then one great one to test, a bit riskier, but it does work, is to just do no targeting at all. Facebook has a really, really powerful algorithm which will find essentially your best prospects. So sometimes it's good to test just no targeting at all. So this is really around audiences. The second big point about this is, again, generally around digital, but specifically on Facebook and Instagram channels, is to create really good visual content. So just some myth busters on content. Many organizations have the thought that you need a really big budget to create good content, that maybe 1 or 2 videos can work, and that it needs to be something that looks really extraordinary. So I will say that all of those things aren't true. You don't need a big budget, and you never have too much content to test, and it absolutely does not need to look polished. So as we explained earlier, the digital channels have a really distracted audience. So as I'm sure probably all of us do, people on social media scroll really fast and consume content very fast. And in fact, Facebook themselves, when they give tips on ads, they recommend that a length of the video should be 15 seconds long. So that is really, really short. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to stop the scroll. So ultimately, it is all about motion, is adding movement to images and using kinetic text. So what does that mean is that most people will be watching those videos with the sound off. So you want subtitles explaining what's going on in your video. You want fast shifts between frames, so it needs to move, it needs to be snappy. Again, like we said, keep it really short, but that does not exclude you also sometimes testing longer form videos. So most of the time, the shorter videos work best. Sometimes a long form video, and by that I mean about 60 seconds long, can work as well. So it's always good to test them, even though most of the time the short ones will be better. So mention your brand and your call to action really early, as soon as possible. Get people in there to know exactly what they're asked of. The next thing is to create intrigue or emotion. So again, going back to that ad from BirdLife, that image was really emotional. So it really stops that scroll, or create intrigue. So you can do listicles. So listicles are things like 3 top ways you can help today, or 3 things you didn't know about these birds. So these things can create a bit of intrigue. Some questions at the start of the video. I'll show you a little bit later what we mean by that. You can banners on static images if you are using sometimes static images. Interview style, so that's when you're filming somebody being interviewed. And like I said, keep in mind what motivates your audience. So if you are you're trying to attract a older audience, potentially keep that in mind when you're creating a video. If you're trying to attract younger generations, maybe add some emojis, make it humorous, playful whenever it is appropriate. So here are some examples. So you can see the one here on the top left this really plays with humor and the memes. And so again, if you have something in your country that is trending, jump on that, take advantage of that, and think about your creative with that in mind. These are the banners. So this is a static image. So sometimes, even if videos will work best, if you have limited resources, you can also test static images, and some with emergency banners, urgent appeal like this one, work particularly well as well. So this is the question I was mentioning at the beginning of the just at the previous slide. So, fed up with pointless plastic packaging. So you're addressing directly the viewer. It helps stop the scroll. This is Patrick Stewart. Maybe some of you may know him. And so he's a celebrity. You may already be in contact with celebrities, maybe not. But celebrities obviously work really well on social media. And you can also be playful. So for example, here we added some emoji glasses to this pig. And so that again is a bit playful. It adapts to the platforms that you're on, and it really helps stop the scroll. So here I'll show you some videos. So here you have some of the examples. This is UNICEF. So you can see here that they've got moving imagery here. And that is pretty so there we go, back on track. And then let's try this International Rescue Committee one. So this one's really good, where it has this half circle. It's sort of like visualizing graphics. That works pretty well as well. And then this last Greenpeace Germany one. And so here as well, just text moving along the screen, and pretty self-explanatory of what the campaign is about here. And it's pretty short, 32 seconds. So that is basically what you're looking for. Great. So the third point is on the donation journey. So obviously today more and more people are using mobile, and specifically a lot of people use Facebook and Instagram from their mobile apps. So if your donation page does not look amazing for mobile, you just simply won't get the results. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to optimize your donation page. So first of all, limit or avoid images or too much text at the top of your donation page. So you don't want people to have to scroll down to the forms, essentially. Give people some donation suggestions, but not too many. Generally, it's 3 to 4 options. So here in this example from WFP, they have 3 different options. And there's also a box where people can choose the amount that they wish to give. So this is pretty traditional and it works very well. It's very effective. So if you are more looking for long-term financial support, you can also make the monthly giving or the regular giving option as default option. So again, here you can see on this example that the give monthly has already been selected. And this really helps in getting more monthly donors. So really the tips on this is just to make it as easy as possible for the donor to give. So the less fields, the less clicks and steps you have, the better. So again, taking this example, pretty much all of the steps are on the same page. So they have to select their donation amount, then put their contact details, and they pick their payment method all from the same page. They are then taken to that page that will be processing their payments. So it is very few clicks and steps, and that really helps for your donation journeys. So next step is tracking. So this one is really, really, really important. And surprisingly, many organizations who have been doing Facebook advertising or digital fundraising for a while don't have the correct tracking in place. And this is key. Like Peter Drucker said, if you can't measure it, you simply can't improve it. So if there is really one tip that I have to give about digital fundraising strategies, is to get your tracking in place, so you know exactly where your donations and your conversions are coming from, how your campaigns are performing, so that you can continue improving them. So make sure you have the right tracking on your pages. What does this mean? So we'll talk a little bit, I talked a little bit earlier about the Facebook pixel. So you can go in your events manager, which is from your main business manager or ads manager, if you are already set up on that, and you can create a Facebook pixel from there. Facebook gives pretty much a lot of tips on how you can do that. So it's quite a straightforward step. So that would be the step number one if you haven't got a Facebook pixel created yet for your ad account. Then the advice would be to get a developer to set it up on your donation page. And then that is essentially, it's a bit of code that they just need to put on the page, and what this pixel will help do is to fire the right information back to your ad manager, so you know exactly when someone's donated, so you know if your campaign is working, if your ads are working. So one of the tips is to add events to your pixel. So the pixel is just the base code, then you can add an event, which here is called a purchase for a donation, or you can also call it donation, and that means that event will fire every time someone donates on that specific page, and that information will be fired back to your ad manager. You can go a step further and add parameters to your event. So here in this example, they have added value, the donation type, and the currency. So again, the value is great because you know exactly how much people have donated, and if you have different donation types, so if you have one-time donations or monthly donations, you can then start differentiating those two donation types. So this is really great to have detailed information about about your campaigns working or not, essentially. So this is a bit more of the technical side. So a couple more things on what the pixel also allows you to do. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. So once you have these events and parameters firing towards your ad manager, you then get that information on your ad manager. And so you know if you're making your money back on your ad spend, you know how many regular donors you have, and you know how many one-off donors, etc. So say you wanted more regular donors, then you can start creating campaigns that are optimizing for regular donors. You can test that. So that's what the pixel allows you to do. A second thing that it also helps to do is to create custom audiences based on your events. So again, we mentioned that a little bit earlier. So you can say, for example, create an audience based on people who have visited your website, or maybe people who have already donated to you, for example, and you can create, say, a lookalike audience of all of those people who have donated. So really the pixel is a really top thing, and advice that I would give is to get that sorted. And it will really allow you to optimize your campaigns as best as possible. Point number 5 is to transform external events into opportunities. So this is a really great one. So what kind of opportunities am I talking about here is not National Dog Day or Giving Tuesday if it means nothing to your market. So to come back all the way to that first point is to know your audience. If you think your audience truly knows about this day, if it's a really big day, if it's an external event that really is viral, then yes, take advantage of it. But what I mean about external events is more about world events or potentially a viral article or video, something that's come up in the news, that's making the news and that's making waves. And those things can be good or bad. If you pick up on those quickly enough, and you can get some really good opportunities in. So one example is for the International Rescue Committee. So this organization, they work with refugees, and when COVID started, one of their main core areas of work was to help refugees in refugee spaces and camps. And obviously in these camps there's very little sanitation, and they really had something to say in that space. So if you have something to say in that space and there's something really going on out there in those world events and that people are talking about, say it. So this was particularly effective for International Rescue Committee, where in March they more than doubled their target income. So I would really recommend jumping on certain opportunities like this, even if sometimes they're a bit sensitive. That it does allow you to get in touch with more people. So really I would recommend doing that. And it can be, that ad can run for a couple of days or 3 days. But if you see that there's something viral and you have something to say in that space, I wouldn't hesitate to go out and just simply say it and ask for support. Okay, so one of my final points that I will make here is testing. So testing is just super crucial on all digital fundraising campaigns, whether it be in Facebook fundraising or you're doing email conversion programs or whatever you're doing. Testing essentially unlocks scale. If you don't test, you don't know what's going to be working best. So I would really always recommend testing whatever you're doing. So an example of testing on Facebook is to do a creative audience fit. So not everyone will respond to the same type of creative. So why not test different types of creative for different audiences? And this is sort of like a cycle, really. If you get to know your audiences better, you can then create better content and then you'll get better results. And again, if you know which better results you are getting, you then get to know your audiences better. So this is really a great one that you can do on Facebook. And this is a great example where here they were doing lead generation campaigns, and the best creative and audience combination got 18 euro cents cost per lead versus the worst one at €1.70 cost per lead. So really you can see that the testing really helps to unlock some scale here. So that's a huge recommendation that I would make on testing. Finally, coming back to that cycle, once you have done all of those steps and you can measure and prove your success, you can then ask for more budget and start again. And if you are eventually getting results like these ones or close to getting results like these ones on Facebook advertising, then you can start thinking about diversifying your channel mix on paid. Again, that's not to say that in the meantime you can also develop email programs continue working on your organic, even if at the very start I did explain that it just doesn't unlock the scale that paid marketing can give you. So really, this is where you want to be at. So to quickly recap, know your audience. Key thing about digital fundraising and fundraising in general: create good visual content, optimize your donation journey for mobile, and then set up tracking on your landing pages, which for me is one of the most crucial ones. Make the most of external events and tests. If you manage to get all of those things and get yourself started with these things, these steps, you'll really start to crack Facebook advertising and digital fundraising in general. If you really master these steps, you have a great digital fundraising strategy in place already. But ultimately, don't overthink it. So this is a huge thing. If this seems maybe a little bit daunting, but a lot of organizations actually already have great campaigns. So don't be a slave to over planning. Don't necessarily start creating a new campaign just for Facebook advertising. Use what you already have available. As I said, lots of organizations have really great things to say, great campaigns. So using the tips from this presentation, get one of the campaigns that you already have running up on Facebook. The other thing is to just not wait until every tiny little bit of your campaign is ready. So if your page, your donation page isn't totally optimized for mobile, don't worry, that's fine. If you don't have video creative right now, that's fine as well. Test images to start off with, for example. So you don't need to wait that every tiny little bit is in place. I think, as I said, maybe the only one that I would really recommend to have in place before you start is your tracking. But ultimately, just get out there, see what sticks, see what works for your audiences, see what works on Facebook, and test. So that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Good luck, and thank you so much for listening through to this presentation. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to meeting you at the Q&A session. Thanks very much. Bye.